Deepwoken is unplayable right now on console. Deepwoken has a console problem. The game's actually and absolutely unplayable on specifically consoles. In today's video, I will be advocating for all the console players right now, covering the various and many issues that Deepwoken currently has, because the game is just absolutely terrible on console, and it's not fair that you guys made the game playable on console just to make it such an awful experience, and it really just seems like the Deepwoken devs only put the game on console and made it accessible to console so people who only played Roblox on console would be able to buy their game and give them money, because it's not playable. If you enjoy, make sure to subscribe, since 0% of people watching this are. I don't even know how that's possible, dude. Why there's 0 people subscribed? So press that subscribe button so you can be my first subscriber. Anyway, let's get straight into it. Alright, so console has a few issues, but the biggest problem with the game, and the most major one that most of these stem from, is going to obviously be the control scheme. Like, realistically, what else would it be? It's not like a PS5 can't run a Roblox game like Deepwoken, but the default control scheme is outright unplayable. For reference, without rebinding controls, you cannot use any mantras, you cannot use your bell, you can't change your sensitivity or controller dead zones, you can't cast any ritual mantras without a separate keyboard plugged in, you can't use any murmurs, you can't taunt, you can't use any moves that require pressing alternative key buttons, such as unmatched dexterity on Silent Heart, and pre-rework Silent Heart you couldn't use Manikari. You can't shift block by default, and you need to set a keybind for it for some reason. You can't drink potions, but you can throw them. And for extra reference, the only mostly playable build you could ever have possibly used on console is pre-rework Silent Heart, but even then, you still wouldn't have been able to use one of the moves, being Manikari. And the funniest part about all of this is, while the default controller scheme, which already is a problem in itself, in order to rebind your controls, you need a separate mouse to properly navigate the menus, because the menu navigation that the controller defaults to, like that it uses with Roblox and console, doesn't really work properly, and that's always been kind of an issue with Roblox and console. But devs usually implement stuff that helps the controller players with this by just like rebinding the controls. But nope, Deepwoken didn't do any of that. So you need a separate mouse so that way you can go into the menu and rebind your controls. And after all of that, and fixing as many issues as possible by rebinding your controls, you will still only be able to use 3 mantras, maybe 4 if you don't bind your bell, because the only way to use mantras, since you can't just quick access the UI on console, is by binding them to the D-pad, which has 4 slots. Meaning if you use the D-pad for 3 mantras, that leaves you with 1 more D-pad slot for your bell. Oh, and I almost forgot, but console players can't fish at all. Even if you rebind your controls, the fishing stuff just doesn't really work, unless you want to sacrifice a mantra slot, which I think you can do if you really want to fish, but I also don't think that works, so yeah, that sucks. Now, my main question is, why would the devs ever allow the game to be playable on console in this state? Was it for the money? Because that's the only way it really makes sense, right? Because it just, like, it's not playable. Like, along with that, right, the devs obviously don't even own consoles, because it just wasn't tested in the slightest, which we can tell because of how many features just outright don't work. And over time, as they release more complex things into the game, which require more unique inputs, like when Silent Heart got reworked and they didn't even bother trying to make sure that it was usable on console. But if you play Roblox on console, I would say that you should not buy Deepwoken right now, because in its current state, you shouldn't even bother trying to play it, because it's not worth your time. It's just going to frustrate you, and even if it doesn't frustrate you, you're basically playing the game M1 only, so it really sucks. But why would they release the game like this? Because the only way it makes sense is if they were just releasing it to try and get a new player base, and they're like, hey, you wanna know what's going on? Because they released it during a dry period. So if they're like, hey, our game's dry, what if we release it towards console, make a big announcement out of it, tell people, hey, the Deepwoken is now available on console, and then they'll buy it, we'll make money, and then maybe that could fund our next major update. So that's what they did. They released it on console, they announced, everyone, Deepwoken's out for console, here's a little bit of a sale, incentivize people to buy more Deepwoken, just on other accounts, stuff like that, buy it for their friends, buy it on console, and boom, now they're tapped into a completely new market of console players, and then the console players buy the game, and then they realize, oh, this is unplayable. They stop buying the game, so the player count doesn't actually increase. Nobody's actually enjoying the game at that point. But it doesn't matter to the Deepwoken devs. Why? Because they just made all their money off console players. They just made $1 trillion, you know? So let's go over some things that the Deepwoken devs should do to fix this. Especially with the upcoming Operation Health of Deepwoken, they should definitely spend some of that time fixing console, which is unrelated, but I want to cover this real quick. The Deepwoken devs do not play Rainbow Six Siege. And if you do, if they do, if you guys are watching this and you play Rainbow Six Siege, you have not been playing for long enough, because Operation Deep Healing is a terrible name. Because if you played Siege at that time, you know that Operation Health was like one of the worst updates that they ever added to the game. And Operation Health was kind of like the start of the downfall of Siege. That was when the player count started to decline, and then Jinxie brought back the game. Sorry, this is completely unrelated, right? Anyway, Operation Health, worst update, one of the worst updates in Siege history. And for some reason, the devs think equating Operation Deep Healing to that is a good idea. That's just terrible branding. But you know, if I were on the lore team, I could also help with branding. It's kind of a lot of what I do with my actual job. Anyway, first of all, you guys need some testers who have consoles immediately. I think Deepwoken could have a big market on console. It's a good PvP game, and I think that if you just made some changes, a lot of people on console would be able to play it, just like Chime, and it would be kind of like Roblox For Honor, but you know, $5. But you know, For Honor it's already like $5. Ubisoft goes on sale with that. But hey, it's not the Ubisoft devs, and anything's better than them, right? It's already one of, if not the most popular and well-known paid Roblox game ever, right? And the thing about console players is that statistically, they are more willing to spend money on games regardless of price than PC gamers are. And Deepwoken's $5, so you know, there's kind of a little edge there. Console players, they like to spend money. Deepwoken's only $5. Who doesn't love a good deal, you know? And then there's mobile gamers who aren't even considered because this is Deepwoken, dude. Have you guys seen the Type Soul mobile UI? It looks like a spaceship interface. Let's stop adding games on mobile that it doesn't belong on. Sorry, I'm off topic again. But yes, Deepwoken, ask your testers who owns an Xbox, who owns a PS5, and find new testers who are exclusively console players who play the game on console and work with them, or have like a dev or two just set aside all that stuff to work with them to improve the game on console. Because if you do that, then immediately finding issues with console bindings and being able to implement console support better would be great. Because I don't think it's fair that you guys released the game on console, made your money, and then you're not going to support the console players who are supporting you by buying your game. Now, as for targeting specific issues, first of all, let's just fix the default control scheme and allow for easier rebinding and menu access. This is the #1 issue. I shouldn't need a mouse plugged into my Xbox to rebind my controls, okay? This is the #1. If you fix this, then like 60% of the problems go away because people can just rebind their stuff. Although, you guys should try and find the optimal rebindings by yourselves and then make that the default, which you could do if you had console testers. Now, along with that, let's get a little bit creative here. Right now, we can only use 4 mantras on console at most, and 3 mantras with a bell. So for Chime players, 4 mantras. Let's add a quick set change bind of some sort. So you could maybe press the D-pad normally for 4 inputs, but then if you press the D-pad on top of another input, like a right trigger or something, or maybe another button, then it'd be a different 4 inputs. Boom, easiest fix for hotbar support right there. And what, there's 12 slots in Deepwoken? Just add 2 buttons that do it. I could press like B and X, and then boom, I have 12 slots in my mantras and all of my stuff in my inventory, easily accessible just like that. Of course, there's also some more optimal fixes they could probably do, because 12 slots along 4 buttons is a little bit strange, but they can work on that. They're the devs here, not me. Along with that, the devs, let's script some things to be possible on console, right? Like maybe make things that just outright don't work in the game. Maybe fix those like you should have 2 fucking years ago, dude. Why is this game out on console when it doesn't even work? Ritual casts should have console buttons. I think this alone is the most showing tell of how little the Deepwoken devs cared when launching the game on console, because ritual casts, an important mechanic, have been completely impossible on console because the devs didn't even think, maybe the people with the keyboards, maybe the people without keyboards shouldn't need to use keyboard inputs. Stupid. For those of you that don't know what ritual casts are, they're the mantras where every time you use the mantra, you have to press a bunch of buttons, like with Flame Wisp and like the modifiers and all that. Yeah, you just can't do those on console. So let's make those work with the console buttons. Yeah, it's that easy. Along with that, you guys also just got to make other mechanics work. Fishing, drinking potions, using your murmurs, anything that requires the Roblox text chat, which you can do quicker than typing a message on console. Just a little bind for it, or maybe turn it into a little mantra for them. Those all need to be usable. And also, why is shift lock not even set by default? It used to be, but on console right now, shift lock does not work without a setting for a bind for it. You know, the binds you need an external mouse to set, those binds, the ones that you need an external bind to set, the ones that the devs should fucking fix. And then while you guys fix all that, maybe even add a console PvP and PvE lock, because since you can't change your sensitivity in dead zones, it sometimes becomes impossible to fight people or certain enemies that move too much, or you know, just groups of enemies. If you want to fight a console player and you're on PC, just run past them. I'm not even joking. Run past them, dodge cancel, M1, they won't be able to turn fast enough 90% of the time. It'll work basically every time. So devs, if you don't want to add a sensitivity modifier setting, which I think would be the better option honestly, then add a player lock for console players. Of course, this is going to be a little bit unfair because range mantras are now basically going to be auto-aimed, but sometimes you gotta sacrifice, and I think being forced to play on controller is already enough of a disadvantage to where this really doesn't matter. And also, if you're going against a console player and they're spamming range mantras, you should probably be blocking or parrying those anyway, don't you think? Like, if I ever see this added to the game, and I see someone complaining, "Why do console players get aimbot for range mantras?" Shut up. You're bad. As a whole, I think releasing Deepwoken for console was actually just a move the devs did out of greed rather than for wanting more people to experience Deepwoken. They dropped the game on consoles so poorly, no testing done, console players bought the game, found it barely playable, and left. But the Deepwoken devs made their money, so they didn't care. They don't care about the console players, or maybe they're just oblivious to its issues, which I doubt because I've heard a lot of complaints from console players, which is why I'm making this video. But regardless, console needs major changes and the devs need to get to work on it. And now is the best time possible because they're already working on Operation Deep Healing, which is an update targeting game health. But if it ends up anything like actual Operation Health in Rainbow Six Siege, oh, this is gonna be a bad update. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe. I'm gonna be dropping my late Christmas album next week, so buy a YouTube membership if you guys want that. I'll also probably be doing the bedroom review stream on Wednesday, so that's gonna be this upcoming Wednesday, which, if I am correct, I believe that is the 14th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time after I upload a video. And then I'll upload the video for that stream like that Saturday on the live channel. So yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Shout out to YouTube members of Tier 2 and higher: Green, Brick, High Card, Goobka, Philip, Delusional Mo, Elstern, Fun Guns, Broccoli, Carlia the Witch, Akio Sugikuni, Burger, and Drizzy Drake Fan. I love you all. Christmas album dropping for YouTube members of any tier next week. Have an amazing day, and goodbye.